less than a day away from that second impeachment trial getting started for former President Donald Trump. And I do want to bring in Fox 2 Detroit's Roop Raj, because we have a lot to talk about here. Hello, Roop. Thanks for joining us. And let's just kind of go over the details, what people can expect with this impeachment trial. This is a very unique situation. Second time for president. This has never happened before.
No, it hasn't. But, keep in mind that the result of this particular one is all but predetermined. If you take a look at the numbers and how they shake out with Republicans in the Senate, who are likely to, of course, move forward to say they would want to convict this former president, it doesn't appear as though they'll have the votes. And so it will be a very long, drawn-out process, because we know from the first impeachment trial it was very much that, because there are certain protocols that have to be in place. We can tell you already late today, all of the pretrial paperwork was all done, essentially kind of a preview or the best of hits of what the Democrats have to offer in terms of what they believe was the president's role in the insurrection on January 6th. They essentially have submitted those pretrial briefs, and that is all but a preview of what's to come in the coming days. We know, as you say, it will begin tomorrow. We also know that the impeachment rules will be the first thing that they'll be talking about. So it's a lot of housework, a lot of housekeeping, so to speak, that has to be done right off the bat, as was done in the first particular trial, before things get meaty in terms of all of the stuff that both sides want to talk about. In particular, the Democrats wanting to talk about what they believe the president's role was in the insurrection and the mob that killed 5 people at the Capitol on January 6th. They will argue that this particular former president was directly tied to inciting and essentially directing his followers to head into the Capitol and use any means necessary to get in there and disrupt the process of those votes being counted. This is something that the president has said in the past that he believes was an unfair election, and he has always been one of the first people in the forefront to tell his followers that this is a matter of our country's future, that we have to take back the country. He's used language like we have to fight. And so the Democrats are going to argue that all of that language, that rhetoric, was what caused this mob to head in there. It will begin, as you say, tomorrow. We do know that it's going to be essentially, from what we understand, hours and hours of testimony. There's going to be the incitement of insurrection charge that will be placed against this president. Democrats and Republicans will, of course, debate this. We know each side will have roughly 16 hours to debate, and then perhaps even call on witnesses as well. Of course, President Trump, the former president, says he will not come out to testify.
Yeah, and hearing that, were you at all surprised to hear that he's not going to be coming and doing this and participating as a witness?
I've had the chance to interview this president 3 times, and I'm still in touch with some of his former staff. And in talking to them, I can tell you right now that many of them have said that they are not surprised at all that this former president didn't want to be put in the hot seat. Here's the deal, though. Let's not be unclear about this. Former President Trump is being very clear that this particular impeachment trial he believes is unfair, he believes is a witch hunt, but it also gives him an opportunity to come back out in the media and direct the attention back to his original point, which in his belief was that this was an unfair election. If you think about it, once he left the White House on January 20th, early in the morning at about 8 a.m. and headed to Florida, since that time, we've rarely seen him, haven't heard from him. And so this will be an opportunity through his legal team to really hear his side of the story relative to why he believes that this was a sham election in his mind. But it does not surprise me.
Yeah, and speaking of Trump's legal team, the lawyers sent out that brief saying that this was political theater. Is this something that they have a point? Is this even constitutional to be doing for when he's out of office, doing this second impeachment trial?
The argument that the Democrats are going to make, and if you read some of their pretrial briefs, which I've had the chance to kind of skim, they basically say that regardless of whether or not someone is in office or out of office, in their mind, the directive that was given to the people who caused that violence was directly from President Trump while he was still in office. And so therefore, they believe that this is very much a direct reflection on what the president did to direct these followers into the Capitol. They'll argue, interesting point, they'll argue that it very much is constitutional because it was the behavior of the president while he was in office that caused the damage that it caused, according to them. Republicans, on the other hand, his 2 lead attorneys will tell you right away, look, David Shane and Bruce Castor Jr., both of them have been very clear in saying that this is unconstitutional. So don't be surprised if the first part of everything that you hear after the impeachment rules for this trial are set forth is going to be whether or not we should even be standing here in the first place. That's very much what you're going to be hearing from the Republican side and those two attorneys.
Now, one last question that I have for you is, if not convicted, then could they vote for President Donald Trump, former president, to not run again to be elected into office?
The only way that could actually codify and become a rule against former President Trump is if he's convicted and he's actually impeached by the Senate. Right now, obviously, that is not the case. It's not expected to be the case. It's expected to be very much what the Democrats believe to be actions that'll put them on the right side of history in their mind, to be able to say, look, we went and we tried to impeach this president. But the only way that he would be unable to run for office is if he indeed is impeached by the Senate. At this point, of course, that hasn't happened.
All right. Well, Roop Raj joining us again, Fox 2 Detroit. Thank you for breaking it all down for us.
You bet. Good to be with you.
And don't forget that we will have you fully covered right here on NewsNOW from Fox. All you have to do is log on, and we'll have you covered from gavel to gavel, as Mike Page was saying earlier. We'll be taking another quick 2-minute break. More to come on NewsNOW from Fox when we return.